Thank y'all very much. Thank y'all for that very, very generous reception. I want to thank your chairman for the great job that he's doing. Let's give him another round of applause for his great leadership for our Republican Party. I want to start out talking about my good friend Dave, your governor. He has done a great job here. You've seen he has held the line on spending. He has cut taxes. Unemployment has gone down. The number of people working gone up. The average income here in Nebraska has gone up. Sounds to me the kind of track record we need in Washington, D.C. as well, by the way. Let's give a great round of applause for your great governor, David Heinemann. He's been a great friend, a great mentor, and a great leader, not only for Republican governors and the National Governors Association as well. Now, before I get to what I really came to talk to you about, I also want to talk about another great Nebraskan. I want to talk to you just a couple of minutes about the importance of sending Deb Fischer to the United States Senate. Can I hear a great round of applause for your very own Deb? You know, I don't think I need to tell you how important it is that we elect her. You listen to her voting record, you listen to the stand she's taken on the issues. She is committed. She has taken the ATR pledge not to raise our taxes. It's not an A, but an A-plus grade from the NRA. She has been 100% committed to protecting innocent human life. Sounds to me like the kind of values we need to send to Washington, D.C. Now, she's running against Bob Kerrey. Bob Kerrey is a fine American, but he's just on the wrong side of too many issues. It seems to me we don't need to bring New York values to Nebraska. We might need to send some Nebraskan values to New York, but we certainly don't need to bring New York values to Nebraska. I don't have time to go through his entire record. I'll just give you 3 examples. When Senator Kerry was in the Senate, he himself admitted that he voted for the largest tax increase in our country's history at that point in time. He also has said he is committed. He has said that he is in favor of the individual mandate, is not in favor of repealing Obamacare. When he was in the United States Senate, he actually not only voted against, he spoke against the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. For these and so many other reasons, he is the wrong person to represent Nebraska in the United States Senate. And here's the ultimate reason. We need not just a majority, we need 60 senators. We need 60 senators as a supermajority in the United States Senate. Here's just the most important thing you need to know about Bob Kerrey if he were to go back to Washington, D.C. He'd be another vote to keep Senator Harry Reid as majority leader. He'd be another vote to enable the same liberal agenda that is destroying our economy and putting this country on the wrong path. We cannot afford another 4 years of President Obama. We certainly cannot afford another 4 more years of Harry Reid as a majority leader in the United States Senate. But let me tell you why I really came here today. Now let me start by thank y'all for making me feel so much at home. Y'all brought some Louisiana weather up here. This is about as warm as it is back home. We're actually about 4 degrees cooler. We got a little bit more humidity on you, but it's about this hot back home. But let me tell you why it was so important for me to come up here today, and I'm so grateful for the chance to talk to you. We're in the middle of the most important election of our lifetimes. Now, people say that all the time, but it is really true. The presidential election this year is the most important election of our lifetimes. Now, why do I say that? You know, our president, President Obama, he seems to me, and I've met him a handful of times, he seems to me like he's a pretty nice guy. You know, he's probably a good husband, a good father, a good family man. I really only have 2 problems with our president. The first is that he has been the most liberal president since Jimmy Carter was in the White House. My second problem with this president is that he has been the most incompetent president since Jimmy Carter was in the White House. But you know, beyond those 2 things, I'm sure he's a very nice man. I mean, those are really the only 2 problems I've got. And I want to share with you why I think those 2 things to be true. Let me start with incompetence. You know, let's start. This president himself has made and broken a series of promises to the American people. But he did say 4 years ago, he did say that he was going to turn around this economy in a little over 3 years, or it was going to be a 1-term proposition. That's a promise I would like him to keep, by the way. In the midterm elections, former President Clinton went out and said, give us 2 more years. If we can't get the job done, vote us out of office. That's a promise I'd like them to keep. Let's look at his record, first of all, on the economy. You know, he promised us. He said, vote for that $800 billion stimulus package. His administration predicted unemployment would stay below 8% if we did that. Indeed, they predicted we'd be closer to 5.6% today. We all know what happened since then. Unemployment went above 8%. It has been above 8% for a record 41 straight months. You saw GM is now offering your money back guarantee on some of their cars. I wonder if we could get our money back from this failed stimulus bill. Well, I'd like to get that $800 billion back. You know, but it's not just the unemployment numbers. You look at a long list of statistics and figures measuring our economy. We've got nearly 500,000 fewer jobs, fewer Americans working since the day he took office. Almost 600,000 fewer manufacturing jobs. 23 million underemployed, unemployed Americans. As our college kids graduate, half of them will be underemployed or unemployed this year. Median family income has gone down over $4,000 since the president took office. Median household worth is at a record 2-decade low since this president took office. We go on and on and on measuring his economic performance. You know, about a month ago, he went to Ohio. He gave a speech on the economy. Lasted about 55 minutes. Really didn't say anything new. 4 years ago, it was all about hope and change. Today, it's about divide and blame. To listen to this president, nothing was his fault. You listen to him, first he was trying to run against President Bush, now he's trying to run against President Nixon. I've got news for him, it's a little late to run against either of those gentlemen. But you listen to his excuses, Harry Truman wouldn't have recognized this president. And you listen to his response to his failed economic policies. What does he want to do? All he wants to do is borrow more money from China to create government programs we can't afford that are failing to stimulate the economy. You look at our national debt. 4 years ago, this president promised us. He said he would cut the deficit in half by the end of his first term. Instead, they've borrowed over $1 trillion, a record $1 trillion plus deficit every year in our name. Indeed, the debt is now over $15 trillion. You know how bad it is? A couple of weeks ago, the German finance minister responded the president was trying to give Europe some advice about how to grow their economy. German finance minister came back and said, Mr. President, with all due respect, now I don't think he actually said, I'm going to paraphrase, I don't think the Germans actually say with all due respect. I don't think that he was that polite. But he basically said this. He said, we don't need you to be giving us advice till you get your own house in order. The Eurozone debt is about 80% of their combined GDP. America's federal debt is now about 100% of our GDP. You know it's bad when the Europeans are lecturing us about spending and borrowing too much. I wrote in a blog, and maybe I shouldn't have said this, but I said that's kind of like the town drunk telling you you've got a drinking problem. I mean, the Europeans, I want to repeat that, the Europeans are telling us we're spending and borrowing too much. That's how bad it's gotten these last 4 years. So what does the president choose to do in response to all this? He promised us he would reform the entitlement programs 4 years ago. We've yet to see his plan. Instead, he creates a brand new entitlement program, Obamacare, when we can't afford the ones we've got. Now listen to all the promises he made and broke in this 2,000-plus page bill. He promised us if we passed Obamacare, he'd cut our health care premiums $2,500 per year. They went up 9% last year. He promised us if we passed Obamacare, we could keep our doctors, we could keep our health plans if we liked them. CBO says over 20 million Americans, as many as 20 million Americans, may lose their employer-provided health plan. He told us he was going to bend the cost curve down. He told us he was going to protect Medicare. He cut over $500 billion from Medicare. Even the government's own chief actuary says those cuts are not sustainable, not realistic. Promises he wasn't going to raised our taxes over $500 billion in Obamacare. And the list goes on and on and on in terms of the broken promises in this awful bill. Now, I think the Supreme Court made an awful mistake with their decision. My concern, not only did they rule this bill constitutional, but in calling the individual mandate a huge tax increase on the middle class. At least they were honest in that. But think about the door they have now opened. They have given the federal government unprecedented power. I want you to really think about this. The federal government can now tax inactivity, the lack of activity, to compel behavior amongst the American people. I mean, really, what's next? I know the First Lady would like us to eat more vegetables. Can they tax us more for not eating tofu? The President has made you and me, he's made taxpayers equity investors in a GM. Can they tax us for not buying GM Volts if we don't want them? I mean, you think about what is the limit? What does the 10th Amendment mean, given this ruling? But I don't care whether you call this a tax increase, a fee, a penalty. I think it's a tax increase. At the end of the day, it's just bad policy. It needs to be repealed. It needs to be repealed immediately before more of these bad policies go into effect and do further damage to our health care system. $1.76 trillion is the newest cost estimate for this monstrosity. But you know, I think I've talked enough about the incompetence part. Now I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to shift gears and talk about the liberal part, about how this has been the most liberal president since Jimmy Carter. And whenever I say that, I always have to say, with all due apologies to Jimmy Carter. I'm not trying to offend Jimmy Carter, but I mean, he may not like the comparison. But I want you to think about this. We have got, when you think about the future of America, this election is really about two different pathways for our country to move forward. On one side, you've got what I call, and I've just nicknamed it, kind of the Occupy Wall Street perspective. This is the class warfare perspective. This is what President Obama has been pushing. It is all about dividing us as a country. It's about doing and saying whatever it takes to win re-election. It's about growing the federal government to a record post-World War II 24-25% of our GDP. It's about managing the slow decline of this great country. It's about dividing up that pie into smaller and smaller pieces. It's about making us more and more like the socialist democracies over in Europe. That's one view of America. It's all about class warfare, demonizing those that have been successful, and talking about, really, about how we grow government spending and the public sector. There's another view of America. This view, this vision that is embraced by the Republican Party and every man and woman in this room says this. It says our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. We're a young country at heart that says, you know, in America, the Occupy Wall Street guys have got it wrong. You're not entitled to your neighbor's property. You're not entitled to your neighbor's house or car. Nobody is guaranteed an equal outcome in this great country of ours. What you are promised in America is an equal opportunity. What makes the American dream so great is that if you're willing to work hard, get a great education, there's no limit on what you can do right here in this great free country of ours. You know what's so great about America? Your circumstances of birth, your race, your gender, your last name, they don't determine your outcome as an adult. I want you to think about this. Everybody in this room probably has a story like this. Every one of us has a parent, or maybe it's you, or maybe it's a grandparent, that was the first in your family. For me, it was my dad. One of 9 children. First and only one to get past the 5th grade. Worked hard so his children could have a better quality of life than he enjoyed. Every one of us has that kind of example in our families. And here's another thing that's so great about America and our families. Every generation has left more opportunities for our children than we've inherited from our parents. That's really the American dream, that they should be able to do even better than we have done. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to become the first generation of Americans that mortgages our children's future, that leaves them fewer opportunities than we inherited from our parents. The reason this election is so important to me personally, I've got a 10-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old boy, and a 5-year-old boy at home. And I want to leave them the chance to pursue the American dream my parents left me. My little girl brought home a button the other day from school, back before summer break started. Kids are amazing. You know, they'll say and do. They're just so honest. They don't filter anything. She comes home. She goes to public school wearing a button. Comes home and it says, "Don't anybody tell President Obama what comes after a trillion." This is an important election for America. We have to decide, do we become more like Europe, or do we preserve that American dream for my daughter, your daughter, my sons, and your boys? I want you to think about this. We celebrated the Declaration of Independence, not dependence, back on July the 4th, a couple of weeks ago. But under this president, they seem to take pride in getting more and more people on government programs, more and more dependent on government spending. That's not what makes this country great. I don't think the president slipped when he said, "Oh, the private sector is doing fine." I think that remark revealed something about their perspective on the economy and our government. So this election really is about two different visions for America. We've got the most liberal, most incompetent president in our lifetimes running for re-election. He can't run on his record. He can't run on his policies. I want to make a prediction for you before I close. They're going to throw mud. They're going to attack. They're going to distort the record. They're going to do everything they can. They've already started doing it. They've already gone after Governor Romney. They've attacked what he did in high school. They've attacked what he did in Massachusetts. They attacked what he did in the private sector. I'm just glad we're not talking about what I did in high school back in Baton Rouge, by the way. The reason they're doing this is this president cannot run on his record, cannot run on his failed and broken promises, cannot run on his vision for America. So all he can do is attack our party, attack our candidate, try to distract us, and try to distort Governor Romney's experiences and credentials. But make no mistake about this. This is a very, very important election about big and important issues. This is a turning point. This is a decision point for America. We have to decide what our future looks like. And I'm here to tell you, we cannot afford another 4 more years of on-the-job training. We've seen what happens. We have seen what happens when you elect as president a man who never ran a lemonade stand, never ran a state, never ran a business, never ran anything before he got into the White House. We've got a nominee who's been successful in the private sector, been successful as governor. Now's the time to put our country back on the right track. Now's the time to not only make President Obama a one-term president, bring back that Senate, take back and hold the House, take back the Senate, make sure we repeal Obamacare, make sure we get rid of this excessive government spending, cut our taxes. Let's leave a brighter future for our children and grandchildren. So I want to thank you for your commitment to getting Deb elected to the Senate, your commitment to sending your votes up to Washington, D.C. to take our country back. Let's elect Governor Romney. Let's make President Obama a one-term president. Thank you. God bless you. And thank you for having me in the great state of Nebraska.